Thank you. I see many familiar faces and a lot of new faces, so maybe I'll introduce myself a little bit. Sheila Bonini, some of you know me. I'm the new CEO of the Sustainability Consortium. I have a bit of history with the consortium. I worked with the consortium about 3 years ago, really helping lay the groundwork for the strategy that has been in place. I was at McKinsey for 15 years prior to that, but I'm really, really pleased to be here. I'm going to talk a little bit. I think my colleague Ewan gave you a bit of a overview. There he is, a bit of an overview with a wonderful accent. He gave you a very good overview of some of the things that we're doing at TSC. I want to talk a little bit about some of the, first of all, some of the opportunity to be together with TEMA1, with the PEF World Summit. But also, I want to talk a little bit about TSC specifically and some of the progress we've made. But I think really where we're headed next. So that's a little bit some of the things I want to talk about, and that's what's behind this idea of our combined impact. So I think our combined impact is TSC is a combined impact, all of our members working together, but also how we can work with the broader community with TEMA1 and with the European product environmental footprint. So I think there's a huge, huge opportunity. So I'll start just first of all by saying it's very exciting for me to be here, and I think exciting for TSC because we have 3 firsts. So for us, this is our first summit in Europe. And I think it's really important because we have such important European members as part of the consortium, and we want to grow that and really step into our global presence. And I think this is a very, very important step in doing that, to be here in Berlin and to be with all of you. So that's a really important first. I think, as Guido mentioned, this is a first for both of us. This is a conference together showing our alignment and how we want to work together going forward and how we have been working together for many years. So I think that's another very important first for us. And then personally for me, it's the first time that I'm here as CEO in a summit. So that's very exciting for me personally to be here with all of you, to get to see everyone, and to work together with you going forward. So 3 firsts, very exciting for me. So like I said, I'm going to talk a little bit, not about what we are. I think we've had a little bit about what TSC is through what Ewan talked about, Karen mentioned as well, but a little bit of progress. And it's actually a very, very exciting time for me to come back to TSC, and gives me a very interesting perspective. So I worked with TSC about 3 years ago. We helped lay the foundation for the strategy. But at that time, there really weren't that many products. TSC didn't have a lot of product output. So we made enormous progress in the past few years in terms of actually the content that has been developed and the reach that has in terms of the scope. And I'll give a little bit more on that. But I think along with that, what's been tremendous progress, and this is probably more in the last year, is the alignment with so many of the key initiatives and this really important idea to work with the parties that are already out there, not to recreate the wheel. And I have a little bit more detail on that, but I think really tremendous progress if I think about in the actual content of the work that we're doing. But we've also seen tremendous progress in the access to our work. So I don't know how many of you have gone out to see Mary and seen the member portal. So some of you, some of the members, but it's very exciting. This is access for our members to our content. And so we've upgraded that, and that's a very exciting progress. And if you haven't had the chance, Mary's going to be, for the rest of the day and tomorrow, there she is, accessible, and take a look and play with it. It's also incredibly exciting for us, our collaboration with SAP. And I'm not sure how many of you know about the interaction of the TSC and SAP, but the partnership's very important in terms of providing the platform for our products to get out there and to begin to be used by the retailers. So we have this SAP platform. We, in the past year, have piloted it. Many new users actually getting access to the TSC products. So we're starting to get into that impact we want to get as we start to get our content out there, we start to get our content used. And it's working together with SAP that we're making that platform available. I also think our partnerships are hugely important. CGF, and I know Karen mentioned, a very important strategic partner for us. I think many might have seen the release about deforestation, why TSC and CGF are working together around deforestation. But we're going further than that. We've aligned around the global packaging, Project Global Packaging Protocol, similarly around palm oil. And we're very, very committed to take this further and look towards really solidifying this partnership, working together to drive more sustainable consumer products. So working very closely with CGF. And then we have a number of pilot projects in partnership. And one example is the one with the World Business Council for Sustainable Development, which I think is actually the wrong acronym there. Close, but not quite right. But we have other pilot projects we have going on, and a lot of exciting activity in terms of our partnerships and in terms of piloting and collaboration. So huge progress from where we were a few years back of just deciding what the products were that we were going to focus on to where we are today is tremendous. So really fun to get to see all this. I'll give you just a little taste more of that progress. I think one of the initial goals for the consortium was to try to cover 600 product categories. And I guess it's 600 DPC bricks. The idea being, if we picked the right 600, we would be able to cover, in terms of impacts of consumer products, we'd be able to cover something like 60 to 80% of the impacts. You can see some of the impacts, not all of it's clear, but you've got climate change, ecosystems, human health, resources, water use, right? Some of the things that we're looking at. So where we've gotten to today, well, we're about 1,200 DPC bricks, so more than doubled our original goal. And we're pretty close in that 60 to 80% impact area that we were looking for. So this is just tremendous progress, right? What we can do with the content we have, we can cover 60 to 80% of these impacts that we're trying to cover from a sustainability standpoint. So I think what that means is we have now this content, we have to think about what do we do with it next. The other piece I think that's really, really vitally important in the progress that we've made is the alignment with other initiatives. I think the progress in terms of saying, okay, what other initiatives are out there, which ones have already have significant backing behind them, have the content that's valid, and can we use them? I think this is a really important stage, which is to say we cannot, given the breadth that we're trying to cover, we cannot go into detail on everything, right? But there are a number of initiatives that have done that work, and they've done it very well. So in some cases, we're talking cross-sector, like the Carbon Disclosure Project. But in other cases, it's very sector-specific. So, for example, working with Field to Market in food, bev, and agriculture, or in textiles, working with the Sustainable Apparel Coalition. So I think this is very, very important because what we're doing is making sure we're aligned, and aligned at the level of the language we're using. We want to make it such that if you're already reporting to one of these other bodies, that same language, that same work that you've done and the calculations that you've done to be able to respond can be reused, right? So part of this is understanding we need measurement, we need reporting, right? We need these things because we're looking at changing the behaviors based on it. But we don't want it to be the be-all and end-all. It's not about measurement and reporting. It's about driving impact. And the more we can be aligned and the more we can be efficient, the more we can actually focus on why we're doing this measurement and reporting in the first place, right? So that we can get to the impact. So I think this is really important, the alignment and the driving efficiency. So we've had a lot of progress. Everybody says, that's nice. What's next? So I wanted to spend a little bit of time This is still, work in progress for us in terms of defining our vision going forward. And I think we wanted to use the member summit to get input from a lot of our members. So a lot of this sort of 4 themes is coming through in all of the working groups. And I'd like for all of our members, I'd also like for our friends in the World Forum here to give us input. But this, I'll give you a little sketch of the vision going forward. What are we going to do next? So first is we have this content. We're now covering 60-80% of the impacts we want to cover. What do we do with that? Right? I've said we've got our portal with SAP and we're starting to get it out there. But there's still a lot of work to be done to actually implement, to get this out there with our members and for people to be able to respond to the questions that we're putting out there. So the first thing that we're going to focus on, implementation services. So we're going to help our members and the users of our system, of our content to drive impact. And we want to unlock value across supply chains. So we have to think about how do we use this to go in that direction. We're going to gather the feedback. We'd like to create a feedback loop to gather the intelligence on how these things are being used and how they can be improved. And then we want to tailor and support and boost implementation. So I think the idea is we start out, we've got a number of pilots, we're working with a number of our members, non-members, trying to understand the implementation. Ultimately, what we see is we'd scale this up with partners, consultants, others, right? Some of these are members. So I think the first piece of our focus is implementation. How can we help? Now we have the tools, how do we use them? How do we help people use them? How do we make them better? So the second thing that we want to focus on is usability. And what I think here is similar, it's linked to implementation, but I actually think it's taking our tools and saying, our toolkits are really today about driving a different conversation between the retailer and the supplier. And then hopefully that's going to drive the impact we need. But we have to make sure that interface works. So I think of it as improving the user interface, How do we make our toolkits really usable? How do we make sure that they're driving behavior change, right? Not just some nice information that people read and now I know more, but actually get that user interface so that we can have that being useful in that retail context. I think we have to make sure that we're translating all this science into something that business people can use. So making sure that this is going to translate from some things on paper, some things in our computers, to real business practice and what's happening in the field. And for this, I think we're going to work very closely with some of our retailers to continue to help them to get their arms around how do you use this, how do they integrate it into the systems. So the usability is a very big piece of where we're going to go next. And you can see this is, I'll talk a little bit more about what's in the picture there later. So third, next generation tools. So we've created these terrific toolkits. How to get the implementation, how to get the usability. We're going to have to come back to our tools, and we're going to have to refine and continue to work on our tools. We also have some product categories we haven't covered. We have to figure out our priority product categories. We have to continue in that work. But we want to also work deeper. And we've already started to do this. This is where our alignment comes in with a lot of initiatives. We started to go deeper into supply networks and think about how do we start at this level with the key performance indicators that were high level. How do we then go down to the next level, and how do we make sure that the impact on the ground, whether it's at a farm or in a factory, how do we make sure that that is informing what we're doing at the top? And I think we're doing, for example, work in China where we're starting to work in training in factories. We have to make sure that what we're doing there is filtering back up and we're meeting in the middle. So this, I think, is a very, very important next phase for us, is to think about how we do that and how do we do it right how do we make sure that the impact is going to happen where the impact matters most? So I think we have to continue the work we've been doing with alignment with key initiatives. In some places, it's very clear, and I think we've been able to easily choose partners. It's going to get a little more murky in the middle, and that's where we're going to need to work very closely with our members, and we like the partnership, for example, with PEF, where we want to continue this kind of alignment, collaboration, so that we can steer this course correctly. I think we also want to be able to make our tools, like I said, more usable, more implementable. So we're going to continue to add features, and we're going to continue to make them work. So I think this is a stage where we have some terrific tools. The work is not done. We have to go the next level. We have to really begin to work on the next generation of tools. So it's constant improvement. We've got to keep making them better. Which then brings me to the fourth. So I talked a bit about implementation. I talked about usability. I talked about the tools. It's a lot of it work around what we've been doing, around our KPIs, our toolkits, our content. I think there's an opportunity also if we stand back and we look at the network of people and of organizations that are part of TSC, and I think even broader, we look out especially with our alignment with our European colleagues. We have an incredible opportunity to basically leverage this unique network and think about what's the impact that we can have. So I think we got so caught up in the work and in the importance of our metrics that we need to also think about ultimately where we're going and where are there gaps, where are there opportunities for us to innovate, to drive impact. It may be to step above our metrics and to say, how can we work collaboratively? Are there some opportunities for pre-competitive collaboration for us to solve some really intractable problems? And that's where I think we can be with the power we have of the convening and with the set of organizations that we have in this room, in our organizations, to be able to look for some really difficult cross-cutting problems that we can solve. Because we're crossing consumer products and because often we're going across supply chains, we have an incredible breadth and depth there. So what we're going to do in the short term, we'd like to really partner with some of our Tier 1 members to help define and think about what is the one or two or the couple leadership initiatives where we can really think about how we use this tremendous power that we have to go deeper and to drive the impact we want to have around having more sustainable consumer products. So I think this is in complement to all the other work that is our continued work on our tools and on our reporting and measurement that we need to do. But we also want to make sure, ultimately, the idea of all of this is we're going to drive impact. So I think I want to make sure that we're always balancing how much we're doing in terms of measurement with what we're doing in terms of impact. So that's the 4 areas I wanted to talk a little bit about, where we're going to be focusing next: implementation services, usability, our next generation of tools, and really driving leadership in terms of impact and leveraging the network that we are. So I want to finish with a little bit exciting, I think. So one of the things that we're doing, we talk about our products. So I'm very pleased that we've now created product category snapshots. I think this is, in a way, taking us a step further, and I think a point to end on. We're trying to translate all this complicated stuff of sustainability into something understandable. I'm not saying that we have success, but we're taking product category by product category, trying to get it into a page in business language that it could be understood. So I think we're making progress. I think we have to think about how do we get beyond this room and beyond all of us that are sustainability scientists, sustainability experts, and how do we take what we all know and translate it into how people actually use this information to change behavior. So I think getting it sort of down into something digestible for folks who aren't sustainability experts, really important next step. And eventually, we're not there yet, but eventually we envision, we'll make it available to the public. And eventually, I see, and I know Karen talked about consumers and the importance of eventually communicating with consumers, but I think eventually we have to think about how do we bring them into the equation. And maybe it's through our information, maybe it's through some of the innovation and leadership initiatives, but I think ultimately we also have to think about how do we take this out to the public? How do we actually begin to share some of the content that we all have and make it translatable, make it actually understandable. So I think there's a lot to do. I'm really excited about the progress that we've had to date. I'm really, really excited about some of the opportunities for us to go forward and to really sort of think about how do we drive impact? How do we make consumer products more sustainable? So I'm super excited to be here with you all, and I think that's about it. I'm very happy to answer some questions if people have questions, and also to talk to people afterwards. So,
yeah, thank you, Sheila.
Thank you.